Yeah.
All right.
Hey, shout outs to Amawamba. When I came into the truth, it was back in 2002. The brother was patient with me. The brother's from Philly. He actually came out of the original school. But the brother was patient with me. I learned a lot from the brother. I just want to say shout out to you, brother. I ain't heard from you in a while. It's been a long time. I know you're on the East Coast. When I came into the truth, I heard the truth in 1992, 93.
Right.
Amawamba in 2002 woke me. He's the one that really woke me up. He's the one that sent me books. He's the one that had me going through the scriptures, and he had me really doing studies. So I just want to say shout out to that brother, by HAMASHAYACH, YAHAWASHI, Barakatah, and all the brothers along the way who taught me, brought me into this truth. Give the Most High all praise for sending you brothers.
All praises.
And just want to say shalom, and brothers are going to keep pushing.
Shalom.
All the brothers out there in the spirit, keep it and stay in the spirit. Shalom.
Kwame Yashala. Shalom.
These scriptures on brotherhood. So these are scriptures for the brotherhood of the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel, those who are of Negro, Hispanic, and Native American descent. These are all the scriptures about brotherhood. We read 1 John, 4th chapter, 18th verse to the 21st verse. 1 John, 3rd chapter, 11th verse to the 18th verse. 2 John, verse 6, Leviticus chapter 19, 17th verse to the 18th verse, 1 Peter chapter 4, 7th verse to the 10th verse, St. John chapter 13, 3rd verse to the 17th verse, St. John chapter 13, 34th verse to the 35th verse, St. John chapter 15, 12th verse to the 17th verse, Mark chapter 12, 29th verse to the 33rd verse, James chapter 2, 8th verse, Matthew chapter 25, 34th verse to the end, Galatians 5th chapter, 14th verse to the end, Ephesians 5th chapter, 1st verse to the 5th verse, Psalm the entire 133rd chapter, 2 Samuel's 1st chapter, 26th verse, Romans 12th chapter, 9th verse to the end, 1 Corinthians 1st chapter, 10th verse, Philippians 2nd chapter, 1st verse to the 9th verse, Philippians 1st chapter, 27th verse, 1 Peter 3rd chapter, 8th verse to the 13th verse, Proverbs 6th chapter, 16th verse to the 19th verse, Colossians 3rd chapter, 8th verse to the 15th verse, 1 Peter 1st chapter to the 22nd verse to the end, Ephesians chapter 4 verse 1 to 5, 1 John 2nd chapter 9 to 11, 2 Peter 1st chapter verse 4 to 12, 1 Corinthians 13th chapter verse 1 to 6, Revelations 19th chapter verse 10, Matthew 18th chapter verse 15 to 22, Luke 17th chapter verse 3 to 5, Galatians 6th chapter verse 1 to 3, Galatians 6th chapter verse 9 to 10, Matthew's 18th chapter 23rd verse to the end, Ecclesiastes 7th chapter 9th verse, Proverbs 14th chapter 29th verse, Proverbs 15th chapter 1st verse, Ecclesiasticus in the Apocrypha 6th chapter 5th verse to the 18th verse, 1 Corinthians 4th chapter 20th verse, 1 Peter's 2nd chapter 1st verse, St. John 1st chapter 47th verse, 1 Thessalonians 5th chapter 9th verse to the end, 1 Timothy's 5th chapter the 17th verse, Hebrews 13th chapter 1st verse to the 2nd verse, Hebrews 13th chapter 5th verse to the 7th verse, Hebrews 13th chapter 16th verse to the 17th verse, Ecclesiasticus in the Bible 28th chapter 1st verse to the 18th verse, Matthew's 5th chapter, 22nd verse to the 25th verse. Romans 14th chapter, 13th verse. Zechariah 7th chapter, 9th verse to the end. Zechariah 8th chapter, 16th verse and the 17th verse. Ecclesiasticus in the Bible, 14th chapter, 13th verse. Ecclesiasticus in the Apocrypha, sorry about that. 7th chapter, 10th verse to the 13th verse. Ecclesiasticus in the Apocrypha, 7th chapter, 15th to the 16th verse. Ecclesiasticus in the Apocrypha, 9th chapter, 15th verse to the 16th verse. Ecclesiasticus in the Apocrypha, 4th chapter, 7th verse. Ecclesiasticus in the Apocrypha, 29th chapter, 10th verse. Proverbs 17th chapter, 17th verse. Proverbs 18th chapter, 21st verse. Hebrews 10th chapter, 22nd verse to the 25th verse. Romans 8th chapter, 19th verse. Romans 8th chapter, 28th verse to the 30th verse. 1 Thessalonians 3rd chapter, 11th verse to the 13th verse. 2 Corinthians 13th chapter to the 11th verse. And Romans 15th chapter, 4th verse. All of those scriptures are about the brotherhood for the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel. Shalom.